Good morning. Welcome to the Affordable Housing Advisory Board meeting, Monday, May 9th at 9 a.m. I'm going to call the meeting to order, and if you would, please stand to do the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Thank you. Welcome, everyone. I see some new faces here today, so I'm pleased to hear that. I also did receive a quick call a few minutes ago from Councilman Goods. He is on his way. He had something come up this morning that's going to cause him to be about 5 or 10 minutes late, so he will be joining us in person at that time. But I'd like to welcome everyone. Janika, could you please do a roll call so we can do a determination of quorum, but also to make sure we have an opportunity to see who's here.
Overman.
Here.
Mathis.
Here.
Abel.
Here.
Powell.
Here.
Jackson Sims. Here. Adewopo.
Here.
Rosenwasser. Sarah Combs. And for county staff, we have Cheryl Howell.
Here.
And Nancy Takamori.
Here.
And Commissioner David Hollis does have an excused absence.
Excellent. Thank you very much. It does not appear as though we have a quorum, correct? Yet. If Councilman Goods joins us, will we have a quorum? Okay, great. Well, hopefully he'll get here soon. So we'll delay doing the approval of the minutes. However, do we have anyone that signed up for public comment that might be on the line?
Yes, we have Sean Wilson, and he is on the line.
Mr. Wilson, you have 3 minutes, but we have set aside 15 minutes for those to participate in the meeting and offer us guidance. Welcome.
Good morning, Commissioner Overman and the rest of the board and staff. It was great to see you guys with such a strong presence at that regional conference on Friday and taking a leadership role. And you guys deserve to be called leaders in the Tampa Bay area. There's no doubt about it. I had a very nice video call with three, I think, Planning Commission staff members, Mary Ann and Jay and another gentleman, to talk about the proposed density bonus modification language. And I wanted to share with the board and staff for the upshot of where I think that this should go. And I'll provide any sort of written or oral commentary on the official process as we go through that. But basically, the density bonus program right now is set up to give a small density bonus to developments committing 20% of their development to affordable housing. My general recommendation is that there be a modification to give a great bonus for developments willing to commit to 100% affordable. And I really think that we need to try to get up to 50 units per acre for developments that are 100% affordable. Almost whatever the zoning is, as long as it's multifamily to some extent. Obviously, single family, you're not going to get a density bonus to that extent. But I think any of the multifamilies need to be able to get up to 50 units per acre. And why is that? Because the typical affordable housing development that Blue Sky does and that many other developers do is about 100 units, give or take. So if we can get about 50 units per acre, then we only have to acquire 2 or maybe 3 acres to get the density we need to do a development. And that's much easier to find rather than having to find 3 or 5 or 10 or 20 acres. And it just opens up hundreds, if not thousands, of other sites where affordable housing might work. that will also encourage us to find sites that are closer in, that are more accessible to transit and jobs and schools. Whereas again, if we're forced to find lots that are 5 or 10 acres, then we're way out in the suburbs or exurbs, and that doesn't promote the kind of package of benefits that I think the county is going for. So that will be my reaction. Again, I want to thank the staff that listened to me and explained to me how their program, how the modification is planned right now, and I look forward to working with them in the future. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I appreciate your insights. I too am still reconciling the density bonus study and was actually going to discuss that during my chair updates today. Let the record show that Mr. Rosenwasser has attended. Do we have a quorum yet?
Yes, we do.
Excellent. So the next item on the agenda is, thank you very much for attending, is the approval of the meetings for the April 11th regular meeting. Do I have a motion? Motion by Mr. Powell. Second by Ms. Jackson Sims and Mr. Rosenwasser. Please take a roll call vote.
Overman,
Yes.
Rosenwasser,
Yes.
Mathis,
Yes.
Abel,
Yes.
Powell,
Yes.
Jackson Sims, Adewopo.
Yes.
Motion carried.
Excellent, thank you very much. The next item on the agenda is the chair's report, and I have a couple of different items that I'd like to bring to your attention. The last Board of County Commission meeting, I proposed to use the remaining monies that were in the American Rescue Plan, which the American Rescue Plan was largely designed to help make long-term investments to help individuals recover or communities recover due to the issue associated with the pandemic and the economic impact on communities. So I thought that given that the county received $285 million, roughly, of American Rescue Plan dollars, and the original plan called for, I believe, and this is just from memory, somewhere in the range of 30 to 50 or $60 million towards affordable housing efforts. We did do a great deal of efforts to help communities that were wrestling with either rent or other stabilization issues with some of those funds. But primarily, the affordable housing investment, up until a couple of weeks ago, had been the Youngstown project for 2.6 or 2.8 million, somewhere in that range, which I thought was a very low percentage towards affordable housing and did not fit, in my opinion, the guideline of our original plan. So at the board meeting, prior to the last board meeting, I asked staff to come back and give me an understanding of what items departments had on their agenda, to see what was left, and to bring it back to the board to address the housing crisis that we are seeing right now. What happened is we did find out there was approximately $65 million of American Rescue Plan dollars. And the staff added to the agenda for that same meeting, that report was coming back, an agenda item to offer assistance in addressing our deficit in sidewalks. So instead of having the $65 million go towards affordable housing, as I kind of hoped, or some larger percentage, we did approve $24 million for affordable housing. So we did get that commitment, although that has not yet been approved by the board, but the plan has. Or we haven't brought back an agenda item for that $24 million and how it would be spent. But we did approve, because it was put on the same agenda as my report coming back, the $20 million for sidewalks. Needless to say, I was the only one that voted for affordable housing or voted against the sidewalks. And I wasn't voting against sidewalks per se. I was voting against the idea that the funds, the remaining funds, were not going towards affordable housing. So at least in the largest way, as I had indicated at the prior meeting. But the good news is we got another 24 million. And I'm looking forward to working with all of you, as well as with Ms. Howell and the development community, to find out how to best deploy those funds as quickly as possible in order to increase available housing for individuals that are finding themselves with 0.7 months of inventory out there when it comes to rental properties. That's not enough. So when we have individuals that can no longer pay the rent because they have been offered an increase in their rents at renewal, or they have been told that they're non-renewing because the landlord may believe that that person is no way going to be able to afford consistently an increase in rent that they anticipate bringing back to lease, that puts those individuals in a real difficult spot in being able to find a place to live. We talked a great deal about that on Friday at the REACH conference. The REACH conference was fabulous. I had an opportunity to speak to the community regarding resiliency and in energy and ways that we build communities effectively to create resiliency. And what was core, and what was primarily in a core agreement by all of the leaders from Pinellas, Pasco, and Manatee and Hillsborough, was there is a direct correlation in the importance in helping families and businesses thrive with marrying our development growth plans to access to mobility, whether that be walkability, as we did with sidewalks, but more importantly, transit as a way of marrying affordable housing to transit. Because if you, as we have heard in the past, if you've got to spend $10,000 to $20,000 on two vehicles in order to be able to go to work with two income earners, that pulls $20,000 off of your disposable earned income, and thus makes it very difficult for other expenses to be workable, especially given our average AMI in Hillsborough County and the wages in Hillsborough County. That means our teachers, our public servants, our first responders, many of our individuals that live in our community are no longer able to afford Hillsborough County. And I am going to let you know that I'm being asked by the Vice Commander at MacDill Air Force Base to address this shortage of affordable, attainable housing in Hillsborough County, because the junior military personnel that are being assigned to work at MacDill are having great difficulty finding local housing without having to drive anywhere from 30 to 30 miles or so to get into town, because they can't find available housing. As I mentioned, the inventory that we have right now is very, very low, and their base housing voucher will not pay for the average rents that we have in Hillsborough County. So we have a serious crisis going on right now, and I'm going to work with all of you as hard as we can to make sure that our leaders in our communities know that affordable housing is the #1 priority right now. But as I mentioned, affordable housing is intricately tied to how people get around in Hillsborough County. And so how we are growing our communities and building our communities and providing for a set-aside or an opportunity to add affordable, attainable, and workforce housing in Hillsborough County, having it tied to where our transit will be going, whether it be scooters or buses or whatever, is critically important. So the meeting that we had last board meeting on the density bonus study that had the recommendations of taking into consideration comp plan changes, zoning changes that will increase the opportunity of affordable housing or require affordable housing along our transit corridors, is an important step that I see that this board can support based on what we heard at the bonus density presentation. One of the things we heard at the REACH conference was that there's been a real hesitation to mention the word inclusionary zoning. But in all reality, it's not dead. It's just we have to make arrangements for it. We either have to have the budget to be able to work with the builder or the developer to have the resources set aside for the allocation for affordable housing to make that developer whole as that project is developed. And in the effort to zone certain areas that have a priority or a requirement for affordable housing, we'll need to make sure that we've set aside the priority in our overall budget as a county. So these recommendations need to go to the Board of County Commission for consideration. And one of the questions I will ask Ms. Howell is, has she gotten from the staff when that's scheduled to come back to the Board of County Commission for consideration of adopting the recommendations that were made in the affordable housing in the density bonus. But I wanted to bring that up. For legislative updates, and then we can open it up for discussion. For legislative updates, at the last board meeting when we were speaking about affordable housing, I made a presentation to have the record show that Councilman Goods has attended, but I don't see his card up. Thank you. At the last Board of County Commission meetings, I brought to the attention to the Board of County Commission the fact that we're tracking evictions and child removals. We've been watching that very, very carefully because when a person is pending for evictions, or we're looking at our housing stabilization eviction mitigation program that launched in January, it's important for us to recognize how we can stabilize those households. And once someone has an eviction on their record, it is something that sticks with them for the rest of their lives. So we were looking at that, but what also sticks with them for the rest of their lives is whether they're evicted and can't find a place because of that record, or they are evicted or choose not to stay because the rents have gotten to a place that they can't afford. Sorry. And they have children. They run the risk of losing their children because being homeless is somewhat looked at as child abuse or neglect. So it's critically important that we address that concern as we continue to see rents increase and affordability drop within the communities that we have. And those that have received emergency rental assistance in order to stay in their homes may be hitting the max that they're eligible to apply for. So we may find many more individuals at risk, and I'm not willing to ignore that fact as far as our community is concerned. But the reason I bring that up is recently many of you may have seen in the news that we have a community that is a HUD property where a majority of the people living there are living on housing subsidies. That is in deplorable conditions. Part of it is, rodents and rats and other creatures. Part of it is not participating or addressing requests for maintenance and repairs in a timely fashion. Part of it is mold. And I'm addressing that with the Department of Business and Professional Regulation Secretary because that's the state agency that oversees multifamily housing for 5 units or more. Ironically, hotels and apartment buildings or multifamily housing are in the same category, right? So, which just seems bizarre, but okay. But they're in the position of regulating that whether that's, safe housing and addressing any repairs or history or violations in that effort. HUD also has its own process in outsourcing to management group and local groups for inspecting those properties, and they seem to be siloed. So I met with the HUD, our code enforcement for the city and the county, representatives with the city and the county for the city of Tampa, as well as the HUD representatives out of Jacksonville. And we discussed the siloing of the reporting process, the risk that people, the tenants have to retribution should they complain and it not be resolved. And we will be meeting again on this particular property, but also the problem of the siloing of the reporting in order to create greater accountability, in order to help people be able to stay where they are without feeling as though they're worried about getting evicted or asked to leave if they complain about maintenance that may or may not have been addressed, or conditions that are unsafe, whether it be at the current property or any future property, whether it be a HUD property or whether it's a privately managed property or privately owned managed property. So we are addressing the concerns there, but what is really important is it affects our available housing. We inspect our properties. The county's properties do get inspected. And we do oversee the quality and the concerns in those properties. But not all properties fall under that umbrella. So I just wanted to let you know, my office is working on trying to address those concerns. And a big light has been shown on it. Last year we had Timber Falls. This year it seems to be Silver Oaks. But I have requested information from HUD, from the Jacksonville office, on the number of properties, a listing of all the properties, and a history of the repairs and resolution of the properties for those properties in Hillsborough County. We've not gotten that report. We're still asking for enough detail that it matters. And we've gotten a little bit of pushback, but we are requesting the information. Councilman Goods.
I did make a motion at the council meeting that we sent a letter to the business professional, and that has been done. I made that motion. The letter was written by my city council attorney, and one of our housing legal person was proofread by myself, and then the chairman signed it. I did also ask that the city's code enforcement, along with our economic development, reach out to business professionalism secretary to ask how could we have a mutual aid agreement to be able to deal with code enforcement issues. I don't know the number of code enforcement officers they have throughout the state or in Hillsborough, but I did ask that that be done and bring me back a report, and that way maybe we can have a mutual aid agreement to our code enforcement can go in and look and cite some of these apartment complexes. It's not just Timber Falls. I don't know it as Silver Oaks. I know it as Johnson Kittle Court as a boy. So that is a very old apartment complex, very, very old complex. It's probably, in need of a lot of repairs. I can remember back in 2019, there was a sewage issue. The plumbing is kind of old in those buildings over there. But again, sometimes the residents aren't good stewards, and they put stuff when they're upset and evicted, and it goes into those systems and clogs the whole systems up. So there's a lot of issues with that, but nevertheless, some of the other mold conditions that are going on, I don't think they're truly being really inspected. So hopefully we can get some answers back as it relates to how we can partner with them as far as code enforcement. I also wanted a letter to be sent to the HUD secretary, but I was advised that could hurt funding for the city as a whole if they come in and they may shut funding out for everybody. So we pulled back. I pulled back on that recommendation, my recommendation of sending something to the HUD secretary. So right now, the recommendation right now that we've asked for, that I've asked for with the blessing of my council, is that we look at how we can partner as a mutual aid agreement to be able to go in and do code enforcement work.
Thank you. And I appreciate it. I saw the copy of the letter that was sent by the city to the secretary, and I appreciate that. As we get the information back from HUD, and we have our meeting scheduled on the 19th, we'll continue to address this issue. But what I found is that the check box, the inspection box form that HUD uses doesn't address mold. It addresses all the other changes that are typically part of the safe housing issue, but it does not address mold. Inspecting for not only whether it's present, but whether or not the air quality would suggest that it's a health hazard. So I do recognize that that is a missing piece that's very important to the health of our residents, whether they're living in HUD housing or military housing. I spent Saturday evening, this is how boring my life is, folks, Saturday evening watching a C-SPAN, I guess it was, C-SPAN, or Friday evening, C-SPAN report on military housing that was experiencing similar situations where potentially mold had caused a health hazard with one particular case they were looking into, and the condition of the base housing was at question, and its maintenance. So it's not a new problem. When the requirements for multifamily safe housing within the state and or federal, but within the state, do not require air conditioning unless there's an air conditioner present. And if there's not one present, what's required is an operable window. And when tenants have to open their window to cool off the apartment, for example, because they can't afford the electric bill, that's a problem. It doesn't mean they don't want to run the AC. It means they can't afford to run the AC. And that can cause mold too. And then they're held accountable for allowing the mold to address or to continue. We live in the southeast region where it's humid all the time. So I think it's important for us to address this issue. So I did ask to our legislative team, both on the state and the federal level, to look into doing some research on how that's been addressed in the past and what's possible. to include that as part of the opportunity to make sure that people, when they're living in safe housing, that they're not exposed, either inadvertently or not, to something that is considered a health hazard by the Environmental Protection Commission.
Madam Chairman,
Yes.
full disclosure for the record, and only for the record. I am the former director of HUD for the Tampa region and regulated those complexes. And I am also the former deputy regional administrator for HUD for the Southeast region. These two complexes, still known on the books as Kenneth and Johnson Court, have long been a problem. And Councilman Good's comments need to be noted. Part of the problem there has been with many of the residents who are living there. Up until 4 weeks ago, the on-site regional manager for Kenneth and Johnson Court currently is an employee of mine and has had tremendous challenges on site there. I need you to understand that in what is the course that is being taken and the course that needs to be taken. And Councilman Goods, you need to go ahead and write your letter. I don't care what anyone has told you. I know how the HUD process works. Write your letter. Everything's in the works on this complex. Anyway, there's a 20-year paper history on the complexes. Write your letter. It's going to cause the project to be abated and not repaired. And when the project is abated, those residents are going to have to move somewhere else. And they're going to be given time specific to move. And we just finished talking about the housing situation in Hillsborough County. And I understand that the current owners are saying that they're attempting to sell the complex. But that's been their answer for a long time. Every time they've been asked about problems on the complex, is that we want to sell. So it does not matter if they sell or not. They still have a legal responsibility to repair the complex while residents are living there. I don't believe you want to see abatement happen, because those folks are going to end up on the street. It is project-based Section 8. With abatement, they'll be given a Section 8 voucher, but there's nowhere in Hillsborough County for them to use those vouchers right now. And it could potentially lead to additional homelessness. This is not the only complex that this property manager owns that is having these same challenges. So HUD can force a change in management and a change in ownership of a property receiving HUD funding. So I think rather than the course that could lead to abatement, perhaps the course that wants to be followed is the course that will change management of the complex and bring the complex up to safe and sanitary living conditions for the residents. Relative to HUD silos, the only way the silo situation will ever change is by congressional act. The silos are the way they are because of congressional action. So I can tell you about that later, and Congresswoman Castor may be able to assist with that, but I would go directly to not Jacksonville, because the Jacksonville multifamily office is overseen by the Atlanta multifamily hub. And I would go to the Atlanta multifamily hub and to the director in Atlanta and place this cleanly on Atlanta's desk. And in all fairness to HUD, they have just this year received funding for travel since COVID has taken place. And so they are pushing REAC inspectors out as quickly as they can. And they've also brought additional additional owners into the process. So they are trying to catch up on what people have allowed to happen during COVID and how they've allowed units to decline. But if you truly want, and I believe that you do, to get to the heart of the problem, Jacksonville and Washington, D.C. is where you need to be working with, because they have the authority level that you need versus the local project managers.
Thank you. And I had every intention of calling Mr. Williams today in Washington, to make sure that he is aware of what is occurring and what solutions we're looking for. Because that's what I asked for. I asked for, I gave time for those that we met with a couple of weeks ago and asked them to come back in 10 days with solutions. Because as you indicated, abatement is not, isn't optimal, because there is nowhere for these folks to go. Mm-hmm. But living in the conditions they're in is also not optimal.
Right.
And so finding a compromise and a solution to those two specific situations is critically important. But then also determining what's the best course for assuring that those situations don't get to that point again. Not in Hillsborough County, anyway. So
It's been like this for over 20 years, so it's time to stop.
it is exactly time to stop. And that's part of the reason why we're bringing it to everyone's attention. But in that effort, not only to address that specific situation and recognize that it's going to cause some upheaval that we would prefer to actually go smoothly, but more importantly, the issue associated with mold is a problem. Mm-hmm. And that does need to be addressed both, I believe, on a federal and a state level. So largely because of the HUD properties, but also, just in the southeast region with the moisture that we have. So I will be, our legislative team is looking into how do we get here where that's not on the checklist? You know, why is it not a part of the inspection process? And what can be done to assure that when a family is paying rent, either through their housing voucher or through their own economic means, that if mold becomes a problem, that it's addressed quickly. We have standards for remediation. We have certification that's required for individuals that do remediation, but we don't have standards for what should be the inspection process to verify that spores are going and creating a health hazard for our residents when it appears as though mold has become a problem. So I'll bring that back to you as those things come, as we learn more research, and determine whether or not we're going to put it on our legislative priority list or whether it be on our state priority list first. We'll see what we can do in terms of making sure that that is a safe housing item for our residents. Mr. Rosenwasser.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. I recently had an opportunity to take a couple weeks off, and go visit family up north, and spent a lot of that time going through one of those weeks was up in Canada, where they do a much better job taking care of those who need affordable housing. I came up with I literally, in the bedroom I was staying in at my mother-in-law's house, I actually had those sticky wall things. Went out and bought them, and I tried to analyze the situation. And I came to the realization that there is no one governmental agency, one governmental level, the landlord and the resident. This is such a multifaceted problem. If you're trying to rent or buy a home now, buying a home, the asking price is no longer the price. You have to add to the asking price. A neighbor of mine had an asking price, and the final buyer ended up paying $100 and something thousand more for that house. On a federal level, which is something our Representative Castor and others can do, I think we need to extend the holding period for capital gains. These apartment communities, and I've been doing this for 40 years, these apartment communities are selling at such high prices, and there's so much money out there, that they're being flipped literally every 18 months. And every time they're flipped, the prices go up. The person wants that same yield at the higher price. And so that's, I believe, what is required at a federal level. At a state level, you're right, I deal with DBPR very regularly. Mold, they don't have the ability, let alone putting it on their checklist. They don't have the ability to test for it. And for those of you who don't know, there are simple little sticks that you can buy. So I'm sure Ms. Jackson-Sims knows. Simple little sticks, very inexpensive, that you can buy, that you just rub against the area of concern. And within seconds, it'll tell you if it's mold, what type it is, and if it's dangerous mold. I think the county level needs to look at the ad valorem tax base and give credits to or count for those who provide affordable housing, whether it be a complete community or a partial community. My company has recently taken over 10, 12 communities from Jacksonville all the way down to South Florida and across I-4. And the rents are going up for a new resident 25–30%. Renewals are going up 12–14%. It's absolutely deplorable. And when you talk about affordable housing, as you alluded to, I call it quality affordable housing. Now, affordable housing is one thing, but quality affordable housing is another. What we need to remember, and we've all seen this on the news lately, is that owners are dealing with huge increases. In fact, the Tampa Times had I think 5 pages dedicated 2 weekends ago, I think it was, 3 weekends ago, to insurance costs and where they are going because of the risks and the losses that insurance companies are facing. The taxes, even with the caps that are in place, are increasing. I am a proponent of an increased minimum wage, but we all need to recognize the fact that when payroll is such a significant portion of operating an apartment community, increasing that minimum wage increases the cost of operation. Another increase in the cost of operation is the repair material pipeline. It is difficult to find new air conditioning units. It is difficult to get new drywall. It is impossible to get roofing materials. I just contracted with a roofer for a nonprofit apartment community to fix the roof, and they told me the earliest that they could, and this is a major repair, they're going to have to take off a lot of the plywood and such. The soonest they could get me on the schedule would be December, because they have such a huge backlog. And December, of course, takes us way past the mold season, which is the summer. So this is a huge, multifaceted problem that taxpayers and government need to address simply out of a sense of human decency and treatment of others. I've dealt with abatement through whether it be THA, Tampa Housing Authority, or HUD, and had to deal with 300–400 families who all at once are given a very short period of time to find alternative housing. That doesn't exist. As you said, it's 0.7 months supply. I know that what I've done is, since we are primarily a third-party fee manager, is I've gone to our owners and said, and this has actually been part of our management agreement, that we want to provide a portion of this very expensive housing, and I'm talking about, in some cases, B and C properties. If you want those rent increases, then I want a portion of those units to be made affordable. It's just, at some point, we as landlords, we as government agencies, need to take personal responsibility for the way our fellow human beings are being treated, both in their housing and in their, just financially. When people are spending 60% of their take-home pay, even at a raised minimum wage, for quality, affordable housing, that is taking away from their ability to feed their families, to get medical treatment for their families, to get fuel for their vehicles, to get to work if there's no public transportation. I listen to people literally every day because I take those calls. And I quite often cry with them because these are parents, more often than not, unfortunately, single parents, single moms, who have a number of children, who don't want their children to be changing schools every 6 months or every 7 months. And this is a problem that needs to be faced by government at every level, by communities at every level, by residents and landlords come together. You know, the longer I sit on this committee, the more passionate, not that I wasn't passionate over the last 40 years, I've become about affordable housing. And I see that in my travels how other countries and other states, quite frankly, are doing so much of a better job than we are. And we live in a state that has no state income tax, that has a relatively low sales tax. We need to find an overall or come up with an overall plan with participation by both government agencies, private ownership, and residents to resolve this crisis. And I don't think crisis is a strong enough word. When you see people, families sleeping in their cars or under bridges, I can tell you that my son, who is a physician at Tampa General, he normally doesn't have an opportunity, he and his wife don't, because they're both in the same industry. They don't have an opportunity to cook because of the long hours. And I'm so proud of them that they will routinely, when they pick up food, they will pick up 2 extra meals. And they know where the homeless are. And they will bring those meals to the folks that are living under the bridge. It's got to the point where the people who live under those bridges and overpasses know their car and wait for them at certain times. So they're doing their share. But we as a community and as a government need to work with the residents, get the residents to understand that they are part of the problem. Because as they don't maintain their home, as they don't use fans as the least expensive means to move air around, if they keep their doors and windows closed, they are creating the mold. This is such a massive project. It needs to be addressed at every level, and excuse my language, but damn it, we as people, as human beings, need to get a hold of this, bite the bullet, suffer the pain, whether it be financial or whatever, and resolve this issue. It cannot, it should not, as far as I'm concerned, it will not continue and cannot continue on an ongoing basis.
Thank you. I can't agree more. It is a urgent issue, and it is, unfortunately, I think we're just at the swell of a huge wave that we have to address. It's not crashed over yet, but it's not far from that. One of the other items that I am working on to bring to your attention is a request for information on the ownership of properties that have been purchased by a corporation that either stay dormant, not rented, and just flipped, or whether or not they are oftentimes organized or managed in such a way that they are offering the equivalent of a commercial lease as opposed to a residential lease. So that meeting, I believe, is actually this afternoon. So I'm looking into that to assure that if there is such a thing as a residential lease, that our residents are being offered a residential lease rather than a corporate lease, which typically transfers 100% of the, almost 100% of the maintenance, the insurance cost, the tax cost, the whole 9 yards. Other than the purchase cost, most of that annual cost is passed on to the resident, which eliminates the risk to the ownership of the property to the large part. So I'm looking into that. I also had a great conversation with an attorney, local attorney recently, that walked through a series of steps to help an individual that could potentially be facing an eviction in order to help them understand their rights. Our eviction mitigation program is very, very helpful, but it doesn't specifically address all of the legal issues. And so I think there's an opportunity for us to help work with communities that are at risk in the future by giving a little more information on the steps, because it's like taking Spanish when you don't speak Spanish. If you don't understand the language, it's going to be really hard to understand the instructions on what you're supposed to do and how to go about doing it. So I think that we can get there, and I think that's an important part. But those legislative updates or at least items that I've brought to our legislative team, both at the state and the federal level, should come back to give us a report at the BOCC level, and I will bring that back to you should it be approved by the board. Additionally, I wanted to check with Ms. Howell to see if, based on the presentation we got last month on the density bonus, do we need to approve those recommendations for presentation to the Board of County Commission? I didn't hear any feedback, pushback on those recommendations at this point, but whether or not they need to be approved before they go to the Board of County Commission for consideration.
No, the planning commission handles that. So right now it's at a staff level. The recommendations typically are not approved. And the other thing that I like to add to that, Commissioner, is that this is not an affordable housing density bonus, but this is a density bonus that that travels across all spectrums of housing. Mm-hmm. In the county, and it helps to create additional affordable housing. So I believe that some other things can be done just in the affordable housing realm, aside from just the density bonuses that deal with all players in the housing industry.
Thank you. And the reason I asked the question is not only because I do think it is it does impact our comp plan, a comprehensive plan, of which the housing element is still in the works. It's been, from what I gathered, almost the last one, because I think we were waiting for these series of proposals to consider. But there is legislation, there is a state statute that permits either municipality or a county to adopt the opportunity to make the comprehensive plan and or zoning changes on our own. So if once we identify areas that should be inclusionary in the sense of offering a requirement of affordable housing in that particular area, because it's married to our transit or our mobility tools and resources, that we're able to adopt those in certain areas. So I will get with the Planning Commission to find out when that's coming to a public hearing, but hopefully it'll come soon, because we needed it yesterday. Thank you very, very much. Are there any other questions? Mr. Powell?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I had brought up
Is your-
something, is that a little bit better?
That's much better, thank you.
Sorry, I feel like I'm kissing it. I had brought up an issue regarding like financing. I think we had discussed maybe at about 2 board meetings ago regarding people that are trying to find, to purchase property that are in specifically like fractured like condominiums. And I have a lot of properties that I manage that are in these, fractured condominiums. And, these are now the new affordable price points where, even though I've seen recently like 3 and 4 bedroom, condo units, in Riverview, going for close to, $250,000. And that is an affordable price point, but someone is not able to get, a Fannie Mae or Freddie Mac loan because there's an entity that owns more than 50% of the units. And when there is an entity that owns more than 50% of the units, it doesn't meet underwriter guidelines. It becomes a non-warrantable, loan and association. Therefore, that person must put down 25 to maybe 30%. However, that's only good if there is an entity that owns less than 50% of the units in one, LLC. So we had talked about, asking, it's a Washington thing. It's not going to be a state or a local thing, but it's going to be a Washington thing because those are, guidelines that are set, from the top down. So I don't know if Ms. Takamori was able to look into that. I know that was something that was brought up, so I just wanted to follow up on that.
I do remember you asking about that, and I'm not sure is Ms. Takamori, are you available to address that issue at this time, or would you like for us to bring that back at the next meeting?
I have located the restriction that Mr. Powell mentioned, and I did find that Fannie Mae had a restriction on financing projects where a single entity owns a certain number of the condo units. But as he said, it's not something that we could impact on a local level because it is it's part of their national sort of underwriting scheme. So, I mean, it's perhaps something that our legislative delegation could look at, but beyond that, I don't think it's something that we can rectify on a local level.
Okay, so I'm going to ask if we could get me something that describes it a little easier so that I can make some phone calls at the Washington level. Just to inquiry if there's something that's possible. Are you familiar with other communities or other states that have addressed a workaround on this issue? Mr. Powell?
No, ma'am, I'm not, because again, it's a federal, it's a federal thing, so it reaches all across the United States. The only situation that I've seen in terms of a workaround are these, communities that are, majority of the units are investor owned, but there's not a single entity that owns more than 50%. Oftentimes, they still have to put down a high, down payment. And someone, in my experience, who is looking at purchasing a $100,000, $150,000, property, they don't have, 20 to 25, percent down. I've, as Mr. Rosenwasser has fielded calls, I get calls all the time when we have something that goes up in these communities and, they want to purchase with, a Fannie Mae loan and they want to put 3%, 5% down. And I often, I have to explain to them that's just not going to work. And they think that I don't want to sell them something that's, and I said, well, it's just not it. It's just you're not going to be able to unless you have, the cash, to put down. So, there are some communities I'm aware of that I've seen, loans go through, but it's because there wasn't an entity that owned more than even 10% of the units. So I think that this all goes back to the recession, the Great Recession, and things were put in place, to instill confidence in the market. But we are well beyond, they're needing to have that installation of confidence, with Dodd-Frank and all that. It's now it's overreaching now, and I think that some of those rules need to be, dialed back because now you're in a position where only corporations, as Mr. Rosenwasser had said, are able to, take down these large, these communities that are designated really as residential, but they are rented out in the apartment, fashion. And that's okay if you're an individual unit owner, because I think, was it like 98% of all, rental properties out there in the United States are actually mom and pop, owned. They're not multifamily owned or corporation owned, but still, there's people that do want to, purchase, property, and having safe and attainable housing is important, for their, stability. So if we could figure out a way and to have and I think I don't think it's an issue that any political party would have a problem with. I mean, this is something that is, it's across the, the entire landscape. So dialing some of this back, to make it to where the lenders will lend, they're just not allowed to. I mean, the bank will want to do a loan, that's their business, but they're not allowed to because they can't sell it to Fannie or Freddie.
Right, right. Thank you for that. Yeah, if Ms. Takamori and you can get together and put together something that I can run with, I'll run with it. I'm not sure how effective it'll be because it is a national problem. But the other item is corporately owned property, so we'll hear more about that this evening. So this afternoon, I will hear more about that this afternoon and see if it plays a part in what you're asking about. So thank you for bringing that back. So there's a lot going on, and a lot of moving parts here. The good news is we're making great strides. I just got an opportunity to do an interview over at Mercy Oaks sometime last week. It was all the weeks becoming a blur, but last week got a chance to go there after we did the groundbreaking a little over a year ago, I guess. And it looks like that's on target. It's not on time, as you were talking about. The supply chain and the work chain has caused a delay from the February 2022 target date, but it's moving along very nicely. I got a chance to walk through the apartments, a few of them that are still under construction, and the 1-bedroom and 2-bedroom units there are just awesome. So the perception that affordable housing is bad housing is far from the truth. And I'd like to make sure that we address that NIMBY effect, which is very real. But affordable housing and attainable housing is critically important that we provide that for our communities as much as possible. And to address what we heard from Mr. Wilson earlier, whether or not we have 100% affordable housing, maybe that it may be a wide spectrum that goes up to 140% or higher in terms of average median income, because right now it takes 140 to 160% to afford the rents in this area frequently. Mr. Rosenwasser.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. About 4 years ago, my company was approached to manage a 400-plus unit apartment building located on the East Coast, literally on the beach. The roof had been destroyed by a hurricane. And because of that, there was significant mold, more so on the upper floors than the lower floors. This was is a 15, 16-story building, great amenities, everything else. And we approached the government on behalf of our client to say, look, lend our client money to fix the roof to code, to remediate the mold problem at a reasonable interest rate, because in return for my client, who it specializes in low-income housing, and you normally don't find low-income housing on the beach. In return for my client making all 400 of those 400-plus units available for the various levels of lower-income people. And the rules that they had to deal with, in that case, it was a city and the county, didn't allow any of this. Nobody there had the foresight to say, well, look, we can solve a huge problem by giving somebody a loan to fix this property. I mean, we could have provided affordable housing to 400 families in an area that has a similar crisis to everybody else. They didn't. And those 400-plus units are still, that building is still 100% completely vacant to this day. And so counties, cities, as I said before, the state, need to get creative and think outside the box as to more global solutions. I showed the city in that case that it would have resolved something like 22% of their housing crisis. And well, we can't do that. What do you mean you can't do that? You can do it. Our client's gonna pay you back the money. You're not generating any taxes because it's an empty building. Mm-hmm. And we just need to be creative. We need to bite the bullet in the sense of reality and humanity.
Thank you, and I can't agree with you more. The good news is we have one other item that will actually allow something like that to work. I got a briefing this last week on the progress on the Community Land Trust, and it looks like it'll be coming to the Board of County Commission for approval to adopt not only the trust itself, the articles of incorporation, and establishing a board of directors. To move that item forward so that a piece of property like that, rather than sit vacant and not add to the ad valorem, nor to the affordable housing inventory, could potentially be addressed by one of those ideas. So we're moving along in those items. So the good work that's being discussed here is starting to create opportunities. We just have a really big job. So I thank you all for participating in the update today. Like I said, I will be bringing back to the Board of County Commission consideration of some of the recommendations that we saw in the density bonus study that specifically address inclusionary zones and bus areas, as well as an ordinance that permits the county to administratively approve certain areas for whether that be a comp plan amendment and or a rezoning or both, in order to accelerate the opportunity for affordable housing development. And then also I'm following up with staff on getting the results of the TOD study that I asked for back in 2019 that I don't have yet. So we're almost there, I think. But with that, I'll move on to the director's report. Cheryl, have we covered everything today already?
Good morning, Commissioner. Good morning, Board. Good to see you this morning. I just have a couple of things that I'd like to cover this morning. The first being Habitat for Humanity. So I'd like to kind of give you a little backdrop. Habitat and I, we worked together for years. They've done a tremendous amount of work here in Hillsborough County. And so I really challenged them a few years ago with coming up with a more dense product so that we can maximize our efforts. And so they typically have done single family homes. And so I want to say they really have stepped up to the challenge. And we got a couple of different projects going on right now And we're going to invite Habitat back at a later date to cover not only their newest products that they're bringing to the market, but also how we might work together and maximize on the funding that was provided through McKinsey Scott. So, but I do have Tremaine Whitty here this morning to talk about one of their projects that we're going to be highlighting and bringing some video to you very, very soon. Tremaine?
Yes, thank you, Ms. Howell, for having me today. Good morning, AHAB Board. Good morning, Chair. Good morning, all attendees. So as Ms. Howell stated, Habitat for Humanity have a lot of projects that they're servicing right now for our community on behalf of affordable housing services. The one that we're going to highlight today is the Mason Street Manor. So Hillsborough County Affordable Housing provided Habitat for Humanity with roughly $392,000 in home funding to construct 8 semi-attached, energy certified, 3-bedroom, 2-bathroom townhomes with a single car garage and also parking pads. They are located at 218 through 36 Mason Street, which is located in Brandon, Florida. I would invite everyone out there to attend. They do have a block party that they will be having to commence and also celebrate the closing of the project, which will take place on May 18th at 3 p.m. There will be more information that will be shared with the general audience here today as well. The construction for this project started back in March of 2001. As we all know, there were supply chain issues as well as COVID that kind of took the project off schedule, but they have completed 6 of the homes, which you do have 6 tenants that are currently living in them. And the last 2 are expected to be closed out and have individuals moved in by June 2022. Also, the homes are sold to eligible participants that are at 80% or low area median income. And we're looking to have those 2 additional families moved in so that we can celebrate our block party on March 18th with them as well. Back
Thank
to
you
Ms.
so
Howell.
much. Are you done, Tremaine? I'm so
Yes,
sorry.
ma'am.
Okay, great. Thank you so much, Tremaine. And really what that 80% median family income and the cost of a home payment translates to is about $800 per month for a home payment. And I mean, really, that is that's a tremendous opportunity for our families living in this area. And so we are committed to continuing to create home ownership opportunities while we're challenged with meeting the rental crisis that we're facing right now. So as soon as we can create more affordable home ownership opportunities, we will. But we're committed to the rental crisis as well. So much so that we are looking at our acquisition and our preservation measures in a very, very aggressive manner. And so I'd like to say that Commissioner Overman talked about the $24 million that's set aside. We had done an RFQ, I want to say about 3 months ago or so. And so we already had agencies pre-qualified to do some acquisition rehab because we are facing, I want to say, situations where we're looking at 100 or more families being really at risk of homelessness all at one time. And so we're trying to avert those challenges. And so we're looking at really aggressively doing acquisition rehab with some of our partnering agencies. We have a number of different projects that's going on right now. If you've been out in the community, you want to take a ride by Fletcher and 12th and look at the Blue Sky UACDC project that's going up. We have several different projects that are coming online in the Brandon area. I want to say we have a total of 5 4% projects that's going on right now and 1 9% project. So I'm extremely proud of the work that we've been able to accomplish, but there's so much more that we can do and that we're planning to do in the upcoming months. And so as we move on in our agenda, I hope you had an opportunity to look at our recently approve Board of County Commissioner agenda items. We have been really busy lately. We have taken on some additional properties that will go out to RFP very, very soon, very soon. And if you have any questions on those properties, you can contact me, or you can, or we can send you out an updated report of those properties.
Excellent.
Also, on the Affordable Housing Services report, we are right now in the midst of creating all of our budgets as we move forward. Any positions that we're looking at for new hire for October, we have included some additional positions. The work is extremely challenging as we move forward, knowing that more and more people need affordable housing. We don't really have anything on our federal, state, and local grant updates, but I did want to update you on our CLT process. So, and we did not include it in this month's agenda because our final meeting came a little bit late. But on our CLT process, we have really made tremendous progress. We're just tweaking the final things as of yet. And so we will be taking the CLT package to the Board of County Commissioners very soon. It'll be a separate 501c3 that's housed in Affordable Housing Services during its first leg. And as soon as we can get that organization stood up to be a sustainable organization, it will be out in the community, really creating additional affordable housing. And I hope you got an opportunity to look at our newsletter that we had included in our item here, and our calendar of events. So our next spotlighted item on our calendar events is Dawning Family Services. Dawning Family Services is a one-stop shop place for homelessness, or to address any issues resolved around homelessness. And we put, I want to say, upwards of $2 million into this project. They acquired and rehabbed what used to be an old funeral home. And so we're really, really excited about this project. They've already started services. We actually took HUD on a tour there a couple of months ago. And so we're really excited about what this project is going to offer to the residents in the community. If there are any questions about the project, its funding, or the funding sources, please let me know.
Ms.
And,
Howell, according to the calendar of events for that particular investment, there is the May 11th at 10 a.m. is still the ribbon cutting event, correct?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay.
Yes, ma'am.
So we have actually 2 affordable housing events this month. We've got this ribbon cutting that's in your agenda. The one that lists Dawn Family Services that Ms. Howell referenced. So I did actually get a chance to tour this investment when HUD was here, and it is wonderful to be able to provide those kinds of supportive wraparound services to individuals that are looking for housing and need support to get the housing. So it's a really great opportunity for addressing that. And then, as we heard earlier from Mr. Whitty, there is the event at May 18th at 3 p.m. for the Habitat for Humanity. So we do have 2 events that, if you've got the time and can show up and celebrate the great work that's being done in the community, I'd appreciate it. My calendar's a little crazy these days, so I believe the 11th I'm unable to attend, but I'll do what I can to try and attend the one on the 18th. We've got a great partner there with Humanity Habitat. And that's a great project to see that unfold as well. So I'm sorry to interrupt you. I just want to make sure our board members had those dates on their calendar, or at least in their notes, so that they can attend those events in the event that I'm unable to attend myself. Ms. Howell?
Great, thank you so much, Commissioner. Yes, so we have a lot of events, and so not all of our events are on our calendar events. Some of our events are smaller, kind of one-off things that are going on, and so we'll try to keep you abreast of that. But at least once per month, we have a major rolling out of one of our events that we have made significant investments in. And we have our communications team out. Typically, it is television crew out. And we really want to highlight what's going on in the community so that if people are in need, they know where to go.
Excellent, excellent. That's really great to hear. And one of the things I wanted to ask you about, we do have the neighborhoods conference that's coming up very soon. Annually, I think it's the 17th annual Neighborhoods Expo. It's going to be virtual this year, Saturday after next, if I'm not mistaken. I don't have my calendar right in front of me, but one of the things that I got an opportunity, as I mentioned earlier, to get interviewed on, what are exciting things or things that we're working on in the community that are close to our hearts and close to our neighborhoods. And that's when I celebrated Mercy Oaks as being are close to my heart and close to our community and the work that we do in our neighborhoods. But I would like to ask if to get a report back to two items. One, to make sure that we have sufficient representation during that agenda, if at all possible, or a handout that is provided either via electronically or otherwise, to our communities on all of the affordable housing, support, home stabilization, rental assistance information to help our community be aware in our neighborhoods, aware of those benefits that are available that the county has either funded or through our federal rescue funds or ERAP funds, so that people know that those things are out there. But I did want to ask a question as it pertains to what we've done in the past to see if there's a reason to revisit it. In the past, we've had a couple of meetings, and we may have done it recently. I just wasn't on the distribution list because I'm not really the attendee. Meetings that work with our home builders and developers on giving them a good understanding of how affordable housing development works, not only from the capital stack, but to what the incentives are available now that we've, looked at the incentives list, what that basket looks like. And historically, we did have a few outreach meetings where we invited builders and home builders that were possibly interested in participating. And the reason I'm bringing this up is on Friday, the last session of the REACH conference, were, 5 gentlemen on the stage. 4 of them were home builders. One was an urban planning consultant. And they were talking about their ability to develop properties from a perspective of resilience, things that they might want to consider, different methods to embrace, energy efficiency, flooding, whether it be putting electric charging stations, whether it means putting solar on the roofs, whether various different, other than more than just the, lead appliances. It's more than building sustainable communities that actually work really well. So they were talking about those techniques and what they need. And when we asked, the audience asked, when we did the Q&A, what is it going to take for more developers and home builders, whether it's multifamily or single family, to get more folks in the game to do this work? And they listed pretty much every single item that's on our incentive list. They also complimented Ms. Howell for the great work that she does. But I think it's worth considering maybe bringing back that outreach program, or making sure that we celebrate or get that information out to our home builders and developers, but especially our smaller ones that could actually do some of the work when it comes to rehabilitation or stabilizing communities that are at risk of losing housing or, as you mentioned, sit empty, and where that structure could actually add to our inventory and needs. Councilman Goods, you have a question?
It's the same thing I tell our people at on the other end. You know, the big guys see the capital and they don't want the incentives now. They're not asking for them because they can do what they want to do. If you ask for something, that means you have to give something when you're asking for something. They're not asking. So I think the new model
Well, that's
needs to
because we
be-
give the density away for free without requiring the affordable housing, and I would like to see that practice stop, not only here in the county, but also in all of our cities.
That's one aspect of it, but I think when you look at, when Carol Post was here, I told her, we have to start looking at the little guys, let them eat. They want to eat. So let's build programs so those small companies, maybe can help us in this market because they want that. They need that capital. They need that extra. So I think a focus, like you said, should be looking at those small and medium developers who want that. But a lot of times they can't get it because they don't have that big capital like our big developers and come in and do whatever. So I think it's a grand idea. I know we just did about 25 homes. I told Post where she left, and she got the program working to where we had some of our small minorities who we had, like 15, 16 homes, and they were able to got 2 or 3 each to start building. So I think those are some of the ideas. And again, putting with rehab, and I tell people that's the biggest market we should be really hitting on, is especially in our east side and in the city, is looking at all these houses that are just sitting empty, that are just deteriorating in front of our eyes. That's what we need to focus. The stock is there. We have to take the money and find the resources to put there to take those out of deployable conditions and put them back into working stock. So I think those are some of the general ideas, and probably can work with this program here if you put one together to bolster that housing stock. So I just think you got to look at the small guys who do want to eat.
Excellent. Thank you, Councilman Goods. Ms. Howe?
And so I want to say that, you know, and working with all of our developers, large and small, you know, we are dealing with some very sophisticated issues right now, some very complicated issues. Some of it has to do with access to capital, while others have capital. You know, everybody is struggling with the supply chain. You know, people are having to order trusses, you know, 8, 9 months up to a year out in order to get just a single family home taken care of. So it's some unusual issues that we're dealing with right now, let alone the volatility that's going on in the market that's impacting everybody and how they're doing business. But we really have done a tremendous amount of reach out to many of our small business owners, and will continue to do so. And we'll try to get together a forum. I am working with Florida Community Development Association right now to see if we can't do something on a more regional level, not just Hillsborough County, but on a more regional level, bringing in developers from all of those areas, and talking about the different incentives that we have, so that first of all we can offer up and educate people on those incentives, but also if there's an area that's doing something better than Hillsborough County, well, first we want to be number one, and so we'll copy that and integrate that into our processes, you know, as much as we can. So we want to learn about what other areas are doing, and we want to share what we're doing as well, because we are trailblazers in the affordable housing arena throughout the state of Florida.
Excellent. Thank you very much. Ms. Howe, did you have other items? I wanted to bring up some calendar dates that are important to our board members.
No, I don't have any other items right now, ma'am. I am done with my report.
Excellent. Okay, so our next meeting is actually June 13th, but Ms. Howell, can you share with us the Florida Housing Coalition annual meeting information that's coming up, I believe, in August, if I'm not mistaken?
It is in August. I don't have the dates in front of me right now. typically what we do for the Florida Housing Coalition is we offer that training conference to our AHAB board members. And so we'll send that information out to our AHAB board members. We'll also be offering our Florida Community Development Association conference to our board members as well. So Florida Housing Coalition's training and conference will be in Orlando this year, and it'll be in the month of August. It typically occurs around the end of August and close to Labor Day. I have to pull up those dates. If somebody can do that while I'm talking, I certainly would appreciate it. And the Florida Community Development Association's conference will be happening right here in the city of Tampa. And so, and it'll be people that's doing the same thing that I'm doing, located all over the state of Florida. You have developers there, you have builders there, you have many of the same players will be at that conference as well. And that'll be in Harbor Island this coming September. So that'll be around the end of September. Florida Housing Coalition Conference will be around the end of August. And we'll offer both of those conferences to our AHAB board members. And we're hoping that you'll be able to attend at least one of them. The Florida Coalition Conference will be August 29th through 31st at the Rosen Center in Orlando. So if you can save the date, put a pin in that date, if you will. We offer hotel and conference. We'll pay the conference cost as well. The attendees will be responsible for their food and their travel.
Do you know whether or not there's a plan to offer virtual attendance to that meeting? That happens to be the week that I happen to be out of town, but also, it also is right about the time school starts for many of our parents. So I was curious if there's a virtual attendance that's available at this time or planning to be available.
I am not sure about a virtual attendance on this particular meeting. You know, I see some of our conferences that I attend. They do have a hybrid form where they're offering in-person and virtual. I did not notice this, and I sit on the Florida Housing Coalition's board, and I have not heard them speak of that either. Not at this time, Commissioner. So
I know all of us want to get together because every meeting I go to these days, the room is packed. So there is a desire to get together physically. And this conference I've attended in the past, by the way, folks, and it is an excellent conference. You learn a lot. A lot of the speakers are pretty, not only incredibly brilliant and full of good ideas, but also very inspirational. So, I mean, it is definitely worth a go. But if we could find out if a virtual attendance is helpful, because that is the week, I think, that school starts just before Labor Day.
We will send out all registration information this afternoon to the board. We'll include you on that as well.
Excellent, thank you. Thank you. And then the September date, that'll be interesting too, because that's here locally, so that there may be a great opportunity for our members to attend that and learn much of the development process that I think we all could benefit from. All righty.
And they'll get an opportunity to see how people are doing things in different areas as well. So to have something to compare it to.
Excellent. The only other items we have is future business.
Madam Chairman, just so you know, I just went to the website for the Florida Housing Coalition, and they make no reference at all to virtual attendance.
I'm going to give Jamie a call. See if that would be something they would consider. But thank you for that information at the moment.
I think one of the downsides to having that hybrid conference, it really is the cost. the cost is astronomical to do both of them, you know? And so they work very, very hard to try to keep the cost of the conference down.
Sure, no, I understand.
So that everybody can have access to it, so.
Okay, excellent, thank you very much. Okay, the one thing that I did want to bring to your attention before we go, future business. As I mentioned earlier, there is, last week we did approve from the remaining 63, almost 64 million that went, that was remaining of the affordable housing, I mean, of the American Rescue Plan. There was a receipt of a report that indicated that 20 million was going to sidewalks, 24 million would be affordable housing projects. The sheriff had a funding request of approximately 7 million, of which is yet to be presented to the board as of yet. And the Parks was requesting about 3 million of the remaining 63 million. That leaves a total of allocated dollars of 54 million. It also leaves, by the way, reserves of 9.95 million. So while those are there, they do need to be allocated and spent in order to avoid being lost. So it is a future item because it wasn't on our agenda today. But I would love to get the board's thought process on what we could do to pursue those funds. Where is their interest? I mean, I fought for the 24. I wanted 44. I got 24, and I'm happy about that. But what's left of the American Rescue Plans at this point shows 9.95 million. Councilman Goods.
You know, we have a situation with housing. I mean, we need to take that money and add it to the housing. That's what people are complaining about right now, a place to stay. You know, I just had a lady just the other day called me, and it was on Friday morning. Says, Councilman, somebody told me to call you because you're trying to help the housing situation. My landlord just told me he wants me out in the next month. And she said, I've been on month to month. I said, what was he, non-renewal? She said, he doesn't want to renew my lease. I said, well, I said, what's he asking, about $1,800? She said, how did you know? She said, I paid $8 now. He went up $1,000. And he knows I can't pay that. To me, that's just gouging people, you know. So for me, I think to try to look to allocate those dollars to housing. I think, you know, we're going to have to help.
Thank you. And while you have the floor, could you give me an idea of when the item that the City Council addressed that was going to extend the notice or recommend extending the notice of non-renewal or a rent increase? I know it was an item that was considered. Do you know if it's coming back for reconsideration? Because I think you wanted a lot longer, and you were told that it went too long.
Yeah, I think we sent it back. I thought it was passed, but we sent it back for a few changes. I think it's going to go down to 60 days versus 90 days. And with something else in there, but I think that's due to come back probably a couple of weeks. Usually we send it back, it comes back in a couple of weeks.
Well, 60 days is better, 90 days is better, 60 days is better, but 30 days and 15, which is if you are on a month-to-month, can be the notice.
Oh, yeah.
And as we know, when we only have 0.7% inventory, that's not enough time. So I would be curious if we could copycat, I have no problem with copycatting, okay? But copycat that particular item, should it get fully approved by the city, that we could keep some consistency across the county on that notice in order to give people more time.
I was just looking at, I guess Miami just put out something, an ordinance. I'm going to review it later on today, in reference to tenants' rights, evictions, a housing crisis plan they're building or has built as an ordinance. I don't think it's the one that everyone's really looking for, but it's better than some of the things that are out there right now. And one of the attorneys who's working on it down in Miami, they have a group that's working on it, sent it to me. So I'm going to review it today. But some of the things I saw a little bit more stronger language than some things probably a little stronger language than what we have. So I'll probably, after review it, probably send it to our legal to see if it's something we need to strengthen as well.
And I know that there's a survey out that the city of Tampa is circulating regarding accessory dwelling units. And there's been some shifting of the zoning requirements and possibly setback waivers for ADUs, accessory dwelling units, I believe in the city, and we've had some changes at the county level. But that is not for Airbnb. That's not for short-term rentals, is my understanding. It's really for longer-term rents, longer than a month type of rentals rather than Airbnb type of rentals. Is that correct?
You got to see what communities might want that too, because some communities don't really want those extra dwellings. It changes the whole parameter of the community. So I'm glad they are doing the survey. So we'll just see how that plans out. Housing is an issue, and you have a lot of people that are letting their extended family stay with them. But when you have in the city, you have a lot of people that already have been doing that, but ain't paying no taxes on that. That's another problem, so we try to catch those folks to get those on the roll so we can have a better base. But when you look at some of our West Tampa areas, they have a lot of those units that have been built illegally, or people are staying in there and saying they're family, but they're not family and like the money. So it's a lot of things we have to look at. We just have a lot of issues that just surround housing, folks. We have a lot of issues. And I think what my friend is saying, the thing is, a lot of times the process, people just don't know the process. I hear it all the time when you talk about developers. Well, the city doesn't have a process. What's the process? What are they looking for? I've asked that question too, so I think maybe we jointly find out, well, what is the process? How do we get people to really understand, to if they are a developer, to come in and say, this is what we're looking for, this is the buy-in. So eventually I think you have to have a true process. So developers, anybody who's doing anything knows what that process is and knows what this city or county is looking for when they want to come here and build or when they want to do anything. But I think the key is knowing what the process is. And I hear that all the time from developers. What's the process?
Right. And I think that's fair. There does need to be a process, but I do know there's a trend towards, it used to be in the 70s and 80s, families would immediately, the children would just disperse and move to another city or whatever. Economics is changing that trend significantly, where, we either have a parent we need to care for, or we have children that can't afford to find a place to live or can't afford to buy, where there is a need for an accessory dwelling to support that family. But with that comes the challenge. Do you know when the end of that survey, or how long that survey is going to be
I think
offered?
they just put that out, so I'm not sure. That comes from the administration, so that didn't
Okay.
come from us. So I have no idea.
If you don't mind, if you could give us a report next month on how that, if it's been, if it's been concluded, and ask someone to provide us with an understanding of what that result looked like, because I think that would be valuable to what we're trying to do in partnership with our urban areas.
I'll send Nicole Travis an email and ask who's handling that so we get some information.
Excellent, thank you very much. Commissioner Myers.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I would support maybe 4.5 million of the ARP funding for housing, not knowing if the county has other items that they might want to do with some of the funding. But I would support half.
Thank you, and I will let you know that I specifically said what is left and who's in line. So the report that we saw last Wednesday should be what's in line. So that means, I agree, supporting half of what's there, but the request that I asked the staff to bring back to us for consideration last week was, are there any other departments that have anything in the queue? And please bring that back. And what we got was the summary that was presented at the board that indicated that remaining funds reserved for unanticipated needs was the 9.95. So we do have a motion on the floor to consider half of what's there, no, 9.95 or 4 point, I'm sorry, say, could you repeat it? 4.5 million?
I'll second the motion.
Okay.
I have a question.
Okay.
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair. Being new to the board and I'm hearing these dollars, I want to make sure that the city of Plant City is not forgotten. And I need someone to please, if I could meet with someone, to explain, you have the 24 million. Thank you so much for working. And then if we get the other 4, that'd be 28, because we do have that problem in Plant City too, where people are being evicted. I mean, the homelessness is terrible. So I want to make sure that Plant City is on the docket to get some of that funding for Hillsborough County too. If you could direct me who I need to talk to, or how we make sure we get it, or applications for some of our citizens to get that funding. That's what I needed to know. As far as discussion about that, what do I need to do? as
Thank
well?
you. Ms. Hell? We just go right
Yes,
there.
Yes, I'm here. I was actually just texting Janiqua to make an appointment with you right away so we can discuss that, okay?
Okay, thank you so much. I appreciate it. Thank you.
I look forward to working with you.
Yes, ma'am.
Excellent. So we have a motion on the floor to allocate or request the board to allocate 4.5 million of the remaining reserve funds that have been identified for unanticipated needs. And we have a motion by Commissioner Myers, a second by Mr. Powell. Is there any further discussion? Yes, sir.
Madam Commissioner, I just want to say thank you to you and to the entire board for carrying forward those action plans and those opportunities. I really think that we're really maybe underestimating the problem by thinking that we could, maybe we should request a little less of the reserve that we're talking about. I would strongly suggest to even think bigger. This is just the tip of the iceberg. People are moving into Florida, into Hillsborough County in droves. I was in Los Angeles last year, and I saw people in the middle of the wealth, Beverly Hills, people living on the street, and that's where you start to see the manifestation of the disparity between, income, and of course, housing opportunity. So I really think that we shouldn't we're not trivializing, but I think we should go, ask for the highest we could ask for here. I mean, why should we go 50% if we could already say 75%, or even put the magnitude of the problem on board and say, see, whatever resources we could get, every extra should go towards affordable housing. I don't think we should shortchange ourselves by asking for even 50% from the get-go.
So are you going to suggest making an amendment to the motion?
I'm proposing an amendment to the motion, if you will, in unofficial language.
That's how that works. So you're going to suggest an amendment to the motion, and do you have a specific dollar amount that you'd like to reference, or do you, the remaining funds?
I would propose whatever the figure of 75% of that extra, of that reserve value, 75% of the 9 point.
Yeah, it's 9.95 is
9.95,
listed according to the report. 9.95 was listed as the remaining funds reserved for unanticipated needs after the 24 million was allocated towards affordable housing, 20 for sidewalks, 7 for the sheriff's funding request, which we've not identified as of yet, but he's asked for it, and 3 million for the parks, for a total of 54 million. So the
Correct.
remaining amount was 9.95.
I'll round the calculation and give you the numbers.
Okay.
Madam Chair.
Well, I have a motion on the floor. Let me see if we can make sure we got a clarity first as an amendment to the motion.
Madam Chair, I think the 75% of the reserve funds will be $7.5 million, and that's a motion that I would want to
Okay.
move forward with.
Second. Okay, we have a motion to an amendment to the original motion for, as opposed to 4.5 to 7.5 million, basically. And we have a second by Ms. Jackson Sims. Is that correct? Councilman Goods.
I would like to support either motion, but I can't support either one. We have a housing crisis right now. The chairwoman has already said that she had looked at the staff look at the numbers. The numbers is clear, unallocated dollars of $9.5 million. I just can't support either motion. If it's $9.95 million there, we need to ask for the $9.5 million. Everyone needs It's just a serious situation. I think the public will be like, why didn't we take it all? If that's extra, we should take it all.
Okay. Commissioner Myers.
Can we get some discussion on the 10 million that the county allocates every year for affordable housing? Ms. Howell, can you give us a status of that? Because the county does put in 10 million every year for affordable housing. So when we add what's already there plus the 10 million, that's already there for housing.
No, there's the Hope Fund, the Board of, let me answer your question, and Ms. Howell can specifically give you a report on what we've done with that 10 million every year. As I did carry that with me to the resiliency report, and I believe it was in our board backup last meeting. I'm not positive of that, but I remember seeing it recently. Yes, the Board of County Commission has made a commitment to fund $10 million each year towards affordable housing, in addition to all the other affordable housing resources that do come in that have various different strings attached. That $10 million annually recurring commitment that does roll over in the event we do not use it all is called our Hope Fund. And those dollars are specifically to supplement what we get from the state in terms of our ship and sale dollars from the Sadowski Trust, as well as other housing resources that are available. However, they are constrained in that they are not able to provide affordable housing for an AMI that exceeds 100%. So they don't fit in every bucket. But they do fit the bucket, because the goal of that particular trust and the request by HOPE, the organization that asked us to establish that trust, specifically wanted to make sure that we were addressing the 30 to 50 to 80, average, and to make sure that we weren't working where the niche of the market seems to want to be in the 80 to 120. They wanted to make sure that in our affordable housing efforts and investments that we were including being able to address those that are at the 30% AMI. So that's very helpful. Every June when we go through budget, that is an item that is brought to the attention of the county. And if Ms. Howe can give us an understanding of, briefly, if you have that information handy, to show how we've invested those $10 million since that was established in 2018, 19. We had a half a year in 19, and then we invested in 20 and 21. So if you can give her that report, that would be helpful.
Thank you so much. And Commissioner Myers, this past year in the 2022 budget, there was $11 million that was allocated for the HOPE funds in that budget. I want to say that all of the funding for each year has been allocated towards project. We have a remaining balance right now of $4.4 million left to go out on an RFP. And I want to say that RFP should go out within the next couple of weeks for multifamily projects. So we anticipate that all of the funding for the HOPE dollars will be encumbered prior to budget season ending.
Yeah, and then the reason you had 11 million is because I asked for another million on the flag list during the budget season last year, and got as much as I thought I could get away with in asking. Councilman Goods.
And that's why I say ask for it all, because these dollars here are not tied to anything. You can do what you want with them, versus all the other funding for housing have federal guidelines, state guidelines you cannot utilize for certain things. But taking this money here, you can utilize for anything you might deem necessary to use it for without any restrictions. So that's the beauty about these extra dollars here. So again, I can't support either of the motions because I believe we have a housing situation. I believe we have the money. She's asked for the numbers, and the numbers are there. We should take those funds.
Madam Chair.
Yes, Ms. Jackson-Sims, you're recognized.
I seconded the motion, Councilman, and I seconded it because I believe that getting more is better. I concur with you. All of that money should be going to affordable housing because there is no greater need in Hillsborough County than the need for someone to have some place that they can afford to lay their head down at night. because we're talking about our senior citizens, we're talking about our veterans that are living here, McDill asking for help and assistance from the county to ensure that the military, who are now having difficulty finding places to live here, that they can reside here. We're talking about people at 30% and 50% and 120%. Firefighters, government employees, everyone. Everyone is being touched by this problem. And I'm troubled that we can't come to agreement that it is the number one issue that the county needs to address and ask for it all. But if we can't ask for it all, I'd rather have 75% of a pie than no pie at all.
Okay. Well, you offered the second.
I offered the second for that reason. I could not and would not support the original motion, Commissioner Myers. In all good honesty, knowing what this community is currently facing, I would have had to abstain from voting and explain for the record why.
Okay, excellent.
May I make a comment?
Okay, just a second, please. Yes, you're welcome, and I'll come back to you, Councilman Goods.
Thank you. Looking at the numbers, you've already requested 24, and Commissioner Myers for that's 28 mil. And if we go with the additional 7.5, that's a total, my math is 31.5 mil that we would be.
I would appreciate having 100, but go ahead.
Yes, I would appreciate the 9.5, and then maybe we'll get the 50. Sometimes you ask for higher and you get for what you want. I mean, why, just a discussion, because it is a problem all over. Why not ask for 9.5, all of it? And then maybe, I mean, maybe we'll get the 75% or the 50%. Ask for it all. Because if this department doesn't, another department will. I mean,
Okay.
that's just my comment.
Excellent,
Ask for it all,
excellent.
9.5.
I'm going to ask Mr. Adewapo about your motion. Given the conversation, are you interested in continuing with that motion, which we can move forward? We have a motion on the floor
I would
to
love rescind
amend
my motion.
amend the original motion.
I would love to rescind my motion,
You wanna-
Commissioner, and vote in favor of Mr. Councilman Good's motion.
Councilman Goods, you
I make the
recognize.
motion for the $9.5 million to be allocated for the
Okay,
house.
we have
I
a
second
motion.
that.
Okay, I think we're going to move forward with this amendment to the motion. Any further discussion? Can you please take a roll call vote?
Overman,
Yes.
Rosenwasser,
Yes.
Myers,
No.
Mathis,
Yes.
Abel,
Yes.
Powell,
Yes.
Goods,
Yes.
Jackson Sims,
Yes.
Sarah Combs, Adewapo.
Yes.
Motion carried 8-1.
Okay, excellent. Thank you very much. And with that, we're going to ask Ms. Howell to come back next month and kind of give us an idea of what she sees possible for those resources. The $24 million that we did get allocated via the board approval, and this will make a recommendation to the Board of County Commission at the next meeting to allocate the remaining funds. So the board could still, we're an advisory board, folks, so the board could still reject our recommendation. But if it is approved, we will have a board meeting before our next meeting, and we'll have an opportunity for Ms. Howe to come back and give us an understanding of what those resources, or whatever the board does approve, could be utilized or best deployed. Ms. Howe, you did indicate in my conversations with you prior to the board agenda, BOCC agenda for the $24 million, that you had some ideas on how that would be presented. And that will need to come back to the Board of County Commission for full approval, I'm assuming. But
Yes, those,
could you share
yes,
with
ma'am.
us what your thought process is with that?
Yes, ma'am. It's really surrounding preservation for acquisition and rehab of existing multifamily units so that we can preserve those units in the affordable housing arena for no less than 50 years.
Excellent. That's called making the money work. Thank you. And so you'll hopefully, depending on what the board does, we'll look to have additional funds to be able to address immediately creating more inventory. As we've heard all day, there is, the difficulty with the supply chain and workforce for getting things on time and making it happen rapidly. But where we can, we will. Ms. Jackson-Sims.
Madam Chair, could we have the staff bring us back so that we're all on the same page? Mark made comments earlier about the increased cost. And I think it's important that we fully understand the increased cost. What it cost 2 years ago to build housing is no longer the case today. It's twice as much. And the delay factor of having to wait almost a year now for supplies to come in is also impacting the cost and the potential to develop as many units as we once were with a limited amount of money. So could the staff bring back to us some of the factors that are actually impacting the marketplace so that we all have the same understanding of what's going on as we go forward?
Okay, excellent request. Ms. Howell?
Yes, ma'am. Ms. Jackson-Sims, would it suffice for us to bring in perhaps Jennifer Motzinger from the building industry to give a more in-depth and broad set of information regarding this because that is her specialty.
Excellent. I think that's an excellent request. Are there any other future business items? Mr. Rosenwasser?
I just need to throw out there that while we're talking about $24 or $30 million, I want to echo Councilman Good's unstated opinion. That amount, while significant, is a drop in the bucket to solving the affordable housing crisis in the county, state, and the country. It's a pittance. And we need to look at every possible way. I mean, $30 million is not even going to buy a 400-unit property. I mean, it's a lot of money, but not even for 400 families. We need a massive infusion of capital to create and resolve the affordable housing crisis that exists today.
Thank you. I can't disagree with you more. It's part of the reason why I go to Tallahassee. It's part of the reason why I go to D.C. It's part of the reason why I pray that, somehow the Build Back Better plan comes alive, because that will have a greater allocation towards affordable housing. It's part of the reason why I was somewhat dismayed, although I understand the intent of the down payment assistance program that was allocated out of the sale funds towards making sure our first responders, have the ability to put down a down payment or qualify for a down payment assistance program that took about 1/3 of our Sadowski funds. Well, it's a great program, but right now they haven't defined what the income levels are. They haven't, as of 2 weeks ago. It may have happened somehow last week, but they haven't defined what the income levels are. They haven't defined what the top threshold for the house buy is. So that money is just going to sit there not being utilized because the metrics don't work for being able to buy a home right now. So I'm concerned about that, and that's why our advocacy and our conversations with our legislators and our leaders in our community is critically important, that we help them understand how the business is done and what is needed. And working with our finance arms and those that have the need for community redevelopment credits, I think is one area that we can work on to making sure we're working with our business partners on the private side that also have the ability to bring financial tools to the table is a critical thing that we consider over the next year or so that maybe that number can get multiplied a little better than maybe it has in the past. Any other items for future business? With that, thank you so much. I know we ran over, but I do appreciate the conversation today. And as you mentioned, it is a priority and a crisis in our community. We need to make sure that we're looking under every rock. Thanks again. Meeting adjourned.